So I am going to go back and forth. Today, I want to talk to you about land and purchasing land. I actually wrote, I used to be a blogger. I was a blogger back in the day when blogs were kind of a new thing. And I wrote a long blog about buying land when I was selling, because every single person who would come and want to purchase land in La Plata County, you'd have to go through like hours of trying to explain what you're looking for and what you're doing. And so I actually kind of wrote it all out, and it's sort of the core of what I want to talk about today, but I'm also going to go back and forth between the blog and my notes. So why people look at land. Now, Durango itself is in a much more resort, has a much more resort type background than it used to. We used to have maybe a small portion of the people who were moving here who were doing things because they're looking to buy their forever home, their third home, spending millions of dollars. But what you end up getting in our area a lot, and I'm only speaking about Durango as, and this could go anywhere in the country, but I'm talking about Durango because that's my experience for the last 20 years. So when people would walk in on floor and they say, I'm interested in purchasing a lot, like, okay, great. You need so much more information from them because you have to kind of figure out what's going on in their head, because land is different than I need a home for my family. That's so simple. Like, yeah, you need somewhere to live, but why are you buying land? Like, what is this reason? Some people just want to buy a piece of land in Montana, Colorado, just to say they own it. Maybe some people are thinking I'm going to live off the land. Some people want to go farm it. So to me, it's a lot more complicated than a house. There's so many more things you have to think about. Okay. So some people, you just have to find out the why first, in my opinion. First, the why, and also qualifications. So the why could be that it's cheaper than buying a house. So, oh, Emmy, you got it? Is it working? Yay, cool. So it could be that it's just cheaper than buying a house. So people in their minds think, oh, the average price of a house in La Plata County is getting up towards $500,000. I can buy a lot. I saw a lot online for $60,000. I'll just build my own house. What's the big deal? I can build a house. I'll put up a teepee. I'll just live in the yurt. So they might have this idea that it's going to be cheaper somehow to purchase the lot and build a house, because in their brain, I mean, that's like me when I was younger. I thought I'll just buy a lot and build a house. What's the big deal? How could it possibly cost as much as what houses are going on the market for? So you have to figure out if that's where the person's coming from. And this is not for your typical resort buyer who's coming in and they actually want to buy like a third home and they want to build a $2 million house. I'm talking about like the person that walks in off floor that just says, oh, I saw a land listing. I want more information. So is it something that they're like trying to live off the land? Or are they trying to do some sort of farming? And then if they're trying to build on it, how quickly are they thinking they're going to be living in a home? Are they thinking, oh, I'm just going to call some contractor and get them to build me a home in the next 3 months? Like, there's a lot of they just don't understand how it works. And also there's a lot of people that call on the cheap lot. So let's say your MLS has 100 land listings and there's one that's $40,000 or $50,000 or even cheaper because it's in Silverton, and they think, oh, I'll just like snowmobile up there in the winter and I'll just live there. What's the big deal? So why are some lots so much cheaper than others is because you can't get to them. There's no water. In Colorado, we have major water problems in some areas. And also what might make one lot more expensive than others would be that you have these things already included. You have covenants. Maybe the person, like you're trying to find out their why. Do you have a bunch of farm animals that you want to have on this property? Are you looking for a place without covenants? Do you need to have a fence around the property? Are you looking for irrigation? That's another thing that people don't understand about Colorado. I'm just going to move out west and I'm going to have some horses, or I'm going to have some cattle, or they don't really think like, oh, you can't just like get water out of the ground and feed your animals, or you can't just like it's a desert. You might not be able to have animals living off the land. So these are all the kind of things that unfortunately as realtors, we end up having to teach people about more than just like how to buy a piece of property. But also another thing we have to think about is mineral rights. So in our area, at least, and Todd, I'm sure it's up in your area too, we have a lot of mineral rights. So people that don't understand that there might be a really cheap piece of property, but it might be right next to where there's a big gas well. And what does that mean? And whether the person wants to live there, and just who to call to get more information about all those things. So first off, I wanted to talk to you about, so some of this I'm going to be kind of just reading. So another reason that people might look for land is that housing inventory. There isn't a lot of housing inventory out there. And so they think, well, I'm not finding what I'm looking for. Maybe I'll just build it. So trying to encourage people that if you have to find a builder, here's some people that you might call. Maybe you have a friend that is willing, they're 4 years out for building houses, but they're a friend of yours, and you can pull in a favor with some of these people to just have a 10-minute conversation with someone that explains, yeah, it's gonna take you a long time to find any builder out here who can get your plans through the county. And like I have one person right now that they live in town, and they just closed on a lot, and it's in a regular subdivision right in town. And this was like 2 months ago. So I figured nothing happened, and it's going to be a luxury home. And I said, where are you at? Like, have you started looking at your plans? He goes, oh no, they're going through the county now. And I said, what, you're building already? He goes, no, I'm 3 years out or 2 years out, but we want to get it approved now, so that when my builder has time for it in 2 years, he has it on his books and he's ready to build in 2 years. So I'm like, oh my God, like you got to get some things done right away, and you got to start spending money. People don't understand about loans and trying to get loans on vacant land versus getting one on a house. That's another thing that they might not understand. So housing inventory might be shrinking. So a person looking to build something, instead of just waiting for the right house to come out, that's just ready to go. And yes, you can do a remodel, is a lot different than building a house from scratch. So, okay, so in Colorado, in the Durango area, you also have a county where if you're driving just a few miles out of town in any direction, you're hitting all sorts of different geography, different rock, different soils, different look to the land. So those are all things to consider also, that one size does not fit all for everybody. And it's also going to be a lot different building. Like just think of the normal things that you're doing when you're selling a house. Is this area a high snow load? So you might have to build a different kind of structure than you would in the desert. If they're looking for irrigation, okay, well, let's go to the mesa or somewhere that might have good irrigation. But then you're going to find this sort of experience if you live down there. These are the kind of, like, you're going to have more wind and things like this. So trying to describe the geography to people. Okay, so what is the water situation? So we have a lot of water critical areas, and there are also people that think, I'm going to buy this huge piece of property. You just got to ask a lot of questions. And one of the things that some people think is, I'm going to buy 40 acres and I'm going to subdivide it into all these little lots. Or I have my brother-in-law wants to build a home, and then I'm going to build a home, and then we're going to do this. So in Colorado, at least, with the water critical nature of our state, you can never assume that you can divide a lot into less than a 35-acre portion. So yes, you can sometimes go through the county and get a smaller subdivision, like I'm saying 3-acre lots, 5-acre lots. But some of the people that you talk to who have done that in the past, I'm thinking of the big developers back in the day, like the guy who did Hutch, I think his name, yeah, Hutch, who did all of Shenandoah. He was laughing to my guy who subdivided a lot of property, and said, why would you, don't ever try to do anything in less than 35-acre portions. I would never do it again, because the kind of steps that the county makes you go through in order here to prove water, to prove you have available things for a person to build a home on, mostly water, it's just much harder to prove. And so you got to do all these test wells and all these other kind of things to subdivide a piece of property. So if somebody's thinking, like, why are you looking at that lot out there? What are you doing with this 40 acres? Like, some people will call and say, I need at least 40 acres, or I want at least 20 acres. Okay, well, what are you just wanting some space around you, some privacy? Oh no, I'm going to divide it into like 1-acre lots. Like, just know that these people know what the rule is with some of these things. So let's talk about water. One thing that people ask, this is in La Plata County, I'm going to go into, if people are asking you about how to figure out what a well might look like, where they're buying a piece of property. Hold on, I'm looking for this. Oh, my Lord. Okay, hold on. I'm looking for my GIS. I had it up, but now with Zoom, I can't tell where it is. Oh, there we go. So in La Plata County, this is kind of an easier process than in others. And you can do this on in Colorado, you have the Division of Water Resources. They have a whole site where you can look up wells. It's really clunky and hard to look for. But here's an idea for you if you're looking around. Okay, so let me see. I'm trying to get to, no, hold on. 79 Park Drive. I'm going to go to a house that I did build when I first moved to Colorado. And this is in the Lemon Lake area. So here's an idea for you. If you're looking to do a well search and you say, like, I can kind of help you and judge what wells might be. Every county is going to have something like this. If you're in a smaller county, it might not be as easy. I'm going to check water wells. It's a map layer. Map layers is up here. This is not Google Maps. This is from my county, but see all these wells? So let's say you want to build on this and you're going, well, I have no idea what the wells are going to be. So what you can do is you can kind of look at what's in the area. Now, if this was a 35-acre lot and you're looking at other 35-acre lots, think about water. It goes under the ground, and the further away you are from other people's wells, the less likely whatever your neighbor is getting is going to be what you're getting. But these are all itty bitty lots. They're only an acre. So you can see that wherever I built my well could be where the same water vein that these other people right around me. So maybe I'm not so lucky because I can't go on these people around me, and these are kind of further away and they're down a hill. You can tell it's down a hill because there's also a layer for trying to remember where it is, contours and structures, so you can tell, well, how far away is it from you? Is it down a hill? Is it kind of flat? You can do this sort of thing and then find out elevations as well. So that's, you just have to play around for this for a long time. But if I'm trying to find out well information, and let's say I want to build on this one, and I got all these right next to me, I just have to click around and go, well, what's this well like? And so I'm not clicking on that. I'm trying to click on here. And then if you do details, it's going to show you, if you keep clicking, you're going to find some of these have water wells that go with it. And you can actually get the well, so you get the permit and right from here without having to go to the Division of Water Resources. And if they were done correctly, they will show you the amount of water, well depth. It's only 75 feet. Oh my gosh, nobody does 75 feet anymore. That means the water's real close to the surface, but yield. So they never finished their well report because they didn't tell the Division of Water Resources how much water was coming out of the ground. So a lot of these, if you get good wells, you're going to find that, let's say it's like 3 gallons a minute. Yield means how many gallons a minute. So you can kind of poke around and say, oh, okay, well, what's this person have? And you just keep messing around and you're going to find some. So this is not a way, see this one's yield 15 gallons a minute. That's what mine is, 15 gallons a minute. That's the most that Colorado allows you to pull out of the ground. So this one down here is a really good well, good meaning it produced a lot of water when it was dug, which could have been, 50 years ago. See, this is 1975. So you probably don't want to go on that one. You're like, back in 1975, it was a great well. But anyway, it'll tell you how deep the wells are. So let's say you're out on the dry side. So the dry side of my county is a place that you might be doing this on 35-acre tracts, trying to figure out the water for someone. You're like, I don't know, I'll give you an idea. Let's look at this together. And you see that each one of these is like 750 feet down. Now think about it. If it costs you a well, to get a well, I don't know what the price is anymore, but back in the day, it was like between $75 a foot to $200 a foot, depending on what you hit. You hit sand or soil, it's not going to cost you much for them to drill down it per foot. And then you hit granite, it's going to be like $200 a square foot, or not square foot, a foot going down in the soil, because to get through granite, they need a different bit. They probably need the diamond bit or whatever. So you could have, if you have a 800-foot well, you're talking, what, $30,000 to get the well, or some insane amount of money. And then you might not even hit water. You don't know if you're going to hit water. You can have a well witcher up there and to tell you where you probably should dig your well. But this will give you a general idea. Oh my gosh, well, if you buy this property, you might have a better idea. You might have a good chance of hitting water only because all of your neighbors hit water and it didn't take them hundreds and hundreds of feet to get to it. Say you have a better chance of it. You're not promising anything. You're just saying, I'm doing the best I can. But if you're on the dry side and you do this and all the wells are way far away from you and they're really, really deep, and you notice a lot of houses that don't have wells and it's not on a central system, then you're going to have to worry more that, you might be buying this property and it's only $60,000, but you're never, ever going to have water. And if there's no central water that comes through this area, you're just going to have a cistern. So sometimes you see these properties that are super cheap, but you're never going to have a well, So just warn people that that could be something that happens. So already, yes, you're not getting in a car and you're driving them to go see a bunch of houses, but already you can see how much time this takes to really research a property and know whether it's going to work for the people you are. So these aren't things you can teach a buyer to do. Usually you're going to have to sit with them and kind of show them what you found. You can also, to get more exact, the Division of Water Resources in Colorado, the Division of Water Resources, the one in Durango, it used to be and probably still is. It's in the building across from the post office. So it's like across Camino del Rio, and you could sit down with a water commissioner. And it used to be that I would call ahead, but sometimes I could even just stop by. If I happen to be in the area, I'd stop by and say, is there a water commissioner that's around? And these are people who will sit with you and explain what they know about the area. I love it. So you have different water commissioners for different areas, but they actually have like desk jobs. And especially if you can call ahead, you say, look, I'm looking at this property and my buyer really wants it. Do you know anything about the water wells in the area? So yeah, you could even send your buyer, call ahead and make sure that somebody's in and they can talk to you about wells. But that's like an expert in water wells, and it's free information. It doesn't cost anything. So if you have somebody maybe from out of state and they don't understand the water, this is not irrigation. I'm talking about just strictly they have to drill a well and they want more information. The water commissioner is a great place to do. Maybe post COVID, they're not sitting on their desks anymore, but they always used to be. It's a state job and they were so friendly. Everybody over there was really friendly. And then, of course, if you purchased a property that had a well on it, whether it's 30 years old or it's a year old, maybe not if it's just a year old, I might not bother doing it, but you want to get well tests on it. So you want to know how much it's producing now. So let's say it's a vacant lot and they dug a well on it, but it was 20 years ago. You want to get a test that shows how is that well doing now? Because when you have a well report, let's say it was 15 gallons a minute, that was done on the day the well was dug, and that's the best that well will ever do. So wells don't get better with age, they get worse with age because you're taking the water out of the ground and you have more and more people that build homes around this house or this well. So now it's going to do a little bit worse over time. So you don't want to, I don't know, I guess if the well was just dug, I might not encourage my people to get a well test. I'd probably mention it to them. Do you want to get a well test? It was just done last year, but you also want to get one for quality. Okay. So you have quantity and quality. And this is because was a big E&O claim and suit in my office. And it only ended last year. And it was a really good agent that got caught because she had been in the business for a long time. And for whatever reason, I remember the seller was telling her that it was a good well. And she did encourage her buyers. She still got the E&O suit ended up, our insurance company had to pay, even though she did encourage her people to get the well test and she had it in writing. But you know how lawsuits work and things like that. Sometimes even if you're in the right, it just depends on how good their case is, right? So the claim was they got the well quality test done, but they never did do a quantity because the buyer was trusting that the seller said it was a great well, right? So quality can be done in a few different ways. So your state will have a water testing system. So if you call your local environmental group, so for us, it's called San Juan Basin Health. They're the same ones that do the septic tests. They have little test kits, and I don't remember how it is. Like, do you have to pick it up? You probably have your buyer or you pick up the little test kit, you run the water and see if the well, like if you can figure out how to do it yourself, or you just hire like a contractor, a well tester. You can do it either way. I guess if it was a vacant lot, I would hire a well tester to do it, because I don't know how you hook it up to test it unless there's a spigot there, right? Like an irrigation kind of spigot thing. But you test it, you can send it away, and they can test for things like the easiest one is, what is that? Like all the stuff that's found, let's say you have a well that's too close to the surface and you have cattle or horses in the property, and you have like the poop is going to get in the water. So it's like all the really bad stuff that's chloroform and all the stuff that's going to make you sick and go to the hospital. That is the easiest kind of test to get for the bacterial type of test. But other people get, $100 or a couple $100, and you can get a full water analysis of everything that's in your water within reason. It's going to have like 40 different tests, and that's usually through the state. So they have to send that away, and it takes a little while to get that back. But these are other things you have to consider if there is a well. And just so that I mention it once, in La Plata County, we have septic tests. You have a lot of people who are like halfway building a house and then they just give up and they never finish the house, or they put the well, septic, and driveway in and then they just sell the lot. If there's a septic that was completed on a property, you actually have to test that before closing. Yes, there's no house there, but someone has to hook up a machine to dump water down it, these septic people, and they actually have to test it in order for you to sell that property and get it through the county rules. So don't think that because there's no house there that you don't have to go through that process. It's ridiculous, but I guess I understand why they do it, to make sure that the septic isn't bleeding into the earth around you. So irrigation, just to mention it, if you're buying a property, a lot that has irrigation, make sure you contact the irrigation company or your buyers. I mean, you don't have to contact them. Make sure you get a phone number. So not all shares are equivalent. What's a share over here might be enough water, but you also might have a shorter year or a longer year on some different ditch companies, depending on where the water's coming from. Just make sure your buyer, that's like a whole class into itself. And if you ever have a chance to take even a 1-hour class on irrigation to understand how it all works, it is so important. Any of our areas, I bet you get irrigated properties unless you're in a totally urban area. And you just have to understand there's like class A, there's all sorts of, it's very complicated. Is it priority water? Is it not priority water? Just understand the best person to call about it. I don't know if different states are different, but you just want to make sure that your buyer contacts the company and make sure wherever their water is coming from was done correctly, that it's legal, and that they still have the water right, because sometimes that happens. The water hasn't been used in ever and ever because it's a vacant lot, and maybe they lost their water right over the years. I don't know. And make sure what the cost is to keep it. What are the rules of how often somebody can walk through your land to kind of fix the ditch or to clear it, those kind of things, if that happens to bother somebody, and make sure it's enough water for them to do what they want. That happens in acre feet. Acre feet is the way you talk about irrigation. How many acre feet do you get a year, and how long is the season? Does it cut off before I'm going to need to water my horses for half the year, or do you have to water your horses for 9 months out of the year? What's the soil and ground condition like? This is another thing that's important. So we here in La Plata County have shifting soils. So you'll see on title commitments, especially like we have the Shenandoah area is one, and the whole, what would you call it? The southwest of the county, you'll get a title commitment, and on any piece of property out that way, and you'll see that it says a geologic hazard. So if you're reading all the exceptions, I think, yeah, it's in an exception. It says it's in an area of geologic hazard. And you're like, oh my God, what is there? It's like an earthquake prone area, or you'll get it in areas of rockfall as well. Like if they're worried that you could have a rock come down on your house. But shifting soils just mean that you have to have a bigger foundation, a more engineered foundation than you would in another area. It's just going to cost you a little more money. Don't be afraid of it. If you see it, there are ways they get around any of these things. Obviously, in our area, it's a place that you see $2-3 million homes. They've gotten around the shifting soils. So that's what the geologic hazard means. And if you see that in a title commitment, you just call the building department is the place to call. I don't know why. That's kind of wacky, but the building department knows more about what geologic hazards are if you are in an area that you see it. I know it sounds like, oh, when are you ever going to see that? But we have a whole section of the county where you see that. And I think that with the new building codes, everybody's going to have different building codes in different areas. Here we have good building codes in our county of La Plata County and in our town. But if you go out even one county more, there's nothing. Montezuma County, unless you're in the city, you don't, Cortez or Mancos, you don't have building codes. So you have state codes for electrical and water, like to hook up plumbing, but you don't for actual building codes. So, but in La Plata County, at least, I can speak to the shifting soil thing that I think over the years, the way we need to build foundations is probably not much more expensive for a shifting soil foundation. I think it's just the way we build houses now. Back in the 50s, yeah, like the regular traditional foundation would not be enough if you had shifting soils. I live in a house that got messed up because of that. But it depends. Like sometimes, okay, so soil and ground condition. You can go up Animas Valley. Again, I'm Todd, I know you're from a different area, but when you go up the Animas Valley and you go up towards our resort, you notice there's mountains, and on the right side of the road, it's all granite. And so if you're digging a foundation out there, everything you dig has to go through granite. So if you go up towards Purgatory and one subdivision south of where they have the resort subdivisions, so you have Engineer Village, all these kind of like part of the resort subdivisions, you go one subdivision south to Lake Purgatory, and that is, you might get a lot for $60,000, $70,000, but you got to dig through granite for your well, for your septic, and for your foundation. So in Engineer Village, same deal, but you know, there's such strict building codes, you're not going to build a house there probably for less than $1 million anymore. One person that I talked to that was building a house up in Engineer Village, okay, it's probably a more massive it's more massive than normal home. They had 90, at the time I talked to them, it was 99 dump trucks of granite that they either sold or got rid of just to get their house in there. So you think of like, there's no way a normal person would be able to build a house up there and think they're going to save money because they're not building a traditional house downtown. So know what the soil is like. From what I understand, the other side of the highway, over where you get Castle Rock and those kind of neighborhoods, there's a lot of like gated neighborhoods that, even though it's like the same mountain chain, you don't have the granite on the other side. You have more soil, so it's much easier to dig a foundation. I would never repeat that to a client, but that's what I have heard from builders over the years. So just know, you have to know your area to be able to have a builder that they can talk to. Like, you don't need to memorize all this stuff, but wherever you live, just understand what the soil is like, or be able to explain why one property might be $70,000 and the other one, it might be a pretty nice piece of property for $70,000, but they can't make it as much as this other subdivision over here where it's $200,000 a lot, because the $70,000 lot, you got to build the equivalent house. Maybe it's the equivalent subdivision, but to build the equivalent house, you got to dig through a lot of different stuff. So it's kind of like market price, just what it takes you to build a house. So know that that's important. Also, this is really getting into the weeds maybe, but if you have to put a septic in, if you're not in a central area, then you have to think about, you put a septic in and maybe you're in clay or maybe you're in rock, it's going to percolate differently. So you're trying to get a septic, it might be a more complicated system to do in one area than it would in another. So know that, show your buyer a bunch of properties, or you have them go walk the properties, whichever you end up doing. And then they get this information and they go, God, I really like this one. It's cheaper, but I also like this one. And okay, where do you envision yourself living? And if it's a money thing to them, if they don't have money to burn, then you hook them up with the water commissioner. You have them hook up maybe before they even write an offer. These things don't go under, they're not usually, like land doesn't usually go under contract super quick. Hook them up with a builder, hook a few builders, maybe with the water commissioner, maybe with a good septic company, people that can talk to you because they've done business in different areas and they can actually talk to you about what it would take to dig it there. Maybe they have it narrowed down to 2 different properties and they're not really sure. Just have them talk to these other experts about how much it would cost to build in different areas, because that really, you just don't want somebody after the fact, they buy the property and they go, oh my God, I had no idea how expensive it was going to be. And please break in if you have questions. So that's about soil. oh, what's the size of the lot and is it legal? This is kind of silly, but you don't get this anymore as much. But once in a while, you get those lots that are really, really cheap, and it's because there's either no legal access to it. You get that a lot in mountain areas. So if you're dealing with things up at Silverton or like mining claims, some of those are patented. Let me just go through mining claims and these real cheap lots that you see. You can get loads. There's three different kinds. There's placers, loads, and mills. And it just depends on back in the day, was there actually a mill on it? Like, were they mining something, or were they, everybody bring their rock to this place to mill it and to make it into something else, right? So that's why they're called different things. You don't have to be an expert in any of that. But some of them are patented, some of them are not patented. And I think that has to do with whether you're going to get title insurance. Like, I get a mining claim, I'm going to refer it to somebody who knows what they're doing. I just don't want to deal with it. I'd rather get the referral. But there are also lots that you can buy and you think, oh, it's 150,000. Wow, what a beautiful lot. But there's no road to get there. Or if there is, it's a National Forest Service road. So some of these National Forest Service roads, you don't have the right to get to your property. And if you do have the right to get your property, it's done. I sold one that was a 99-year easement. And we were already at year 50. So I like my buyer, I'm like, I don't know, call the Forest Service and see if you can, what they're going to do after another 50 years. Are they going to take your right away? Like, can you get to your property? Maybe you can get to your property and you're allowed to put a little bit of a driveway in. Maybe you're not. Like, there's all sorts of wacky stuff that comes up. You also get super cheap lots that are just not legal, and nobody should be selling these lots. But let's say it says down in the additional provisions, it says you can camp here. And sometimes that's all people want. They just want to say they own something in Colorado. They want to camp there. That's fine. But there are also small lots that are not legal. So it has to do with whether it's big enough to have a well, it's big enough to have its septic. If you get anything that seems real wacky to you or it raises a red flag, just make a couple calls or come see me if it's in my area, because I know where these things exist. There was a rule that was passed by the county where if you didn't have an acre, you couldn't drill a well. And then you had all these people with half-acre lots that were never notified by the county. So they just call you once in a while and say, hey, I want to sell my half-acre. And you're like, it's not legal. You have to sell it to a neighbor. I think that rule went away, but there's all sorts of wacky stuff out there. So no, you can find that once in a while. How does the property orient? That's important. Let's say if you're buying a house, you can walk in and say, oh my gosh, there's no sun that comes in the middle of winter. Like, know that things change when the sun goes up and down. And now there's apps where you can tell what your sun is going to be like. You can literally download an app. It has to do with people that want to put solar on their homes. But how does it orient? Are you in a place that it's going to be cold and terrible all winter and you never get any sunshine? Is it in a place that's going to be super hot and you just have to recognize that you're on the south side and it's going to be a very hot place to live? Just be aware of that when you're walking customers, that it's great to walk it with a builder. You really want to have a builder in your back pocket. I know they're also busy, but is there someone that your buyer could pay to help them through the process and just walk the property with them and know how to do it if they haven't done this before? What are the restrictions? Know that is there anything that you want to do on this property that there might be a rule against? Do you want to stand out on your back porch and shoot your gun off into the distance? We get a lot of that in Colorado, where I just want to be somewhere that I don't see neighbors and I want to shoot my gun up. You know, those kind of things that I just don't want my neighbors around me. I want to be able to have like whatever it is. I want to do my business for my property. Okay, what's your business? Oh, I have a shop. Okay, that's probably not a big deal, but are there any weird covenants that wouldn't allow that person to build their shop, to have the ADU because they want their mother-in-law to live in a separate house? Anything that they might want. Do you want to have livestock? Do you want to have a fence for your dog? This could be with a regular nice subdivision or a property in the middle of nowhere. Just know to check the covenants and always go to just the title company. I mean, call any title company and say, hey, could you send me I got a property, here's the legal, could you send me the covenants? And then if it's not online, they'll send them to your buyer and they can look through it. And I'm not the one that looks through covenants for buyers. I might point them, if it's maybe the little old lady that's purchasing something, I might skim the covenants and try to find something and say, I think it's on page 32, but you probably should take this to an attorney. But I'm not doing the searches for things like that. That's on them to look into that. I'll get the information to them and they have to read it. Mineral rights. You're just not going to get mineral rights. You have a lot of buyers that say, maybe they know enough about mineral rights to want mineral rights. And they say, I want to know who owns the, this is the question I get. I want to know who owns my mineral rights so I can attempt to purchase them later. Know that if most mineral rights were severed 50 years ago or more. So somebody sold them to somebody else, and that chain of title is not on a title commitment. It was like a piece of paper, and then this gas company bought it from this person, and it's in their file, but then they have like 4 different aunts and uncles who owned little pieces of it. So to do that search, it requires a landman, a landwoman who would do those title searches for you. And even when I was selling, let's say like 10 years ago, that cost was $10,000, like between $8,000 and $10,000 to just do the search. So if you get a title commitment and it says the property rights have been, or the mineral rights have been severed, that's all the information they have. And that's all the information you're going to get. It just tell them, unfortunately, in Colorado or wherever you are, it's very hard to track mineral rights. Electric cost. When you're at a more rural property, if you're like in a Dalton Ranch or somewhere that's like a regular subdivision, you're in town, it's not going to be a big deal to get electric. I can't imagine it would ever be a big deal if you have a regular subdivision where all the lots are right there, or if it's a newer subdivision and it's all right there and it's part of the package, that's one thing. But if you're in a rural area and you see a pole, do never assume that the pole is on the property, or that, oh, you could just drop from that pole. Sometimes you get these, like, I don't know a lot about electric. I sat on an electric board. I still don't know a lot about electric, but sometimes you get electric poles that you can't drop from because it's like high tension or whatever they call it, like high, it's got too much electric. They can't drop from there. They have to drop. So you get those really big electric lines that go through an area. You can't just drop to get to your house. It has to be a regular small electric line. Some of these are underground now. So you have to hire an engineer to be able to look at the property, engineer meaning from LPEA or wherever your local electric place is. And they can look on the map and say, this is what it would take to get to the electric to your property. And it's about this much cost per foot. So if it has to go across a road, you might need traffic cones one day, and you need all the people that stand out there guiding traffic, and then they need to dig in the road, and then they got to repave over it to get it to the property. And if you're in a super rural area, I had to get an easement from my neighbor to get the best electric. Like, it was at the back of my property and I needed an easement across their driveway to get it. They did it for free for me, but I had to like get an easement signed, and then they brought it to my property and I got the little pedestal, but then I wanted to build my house over here. So I had to dig a trench, and the trench can't be in the same trench as your propane. So there's all sorts of things to consider. Know that your first stop is you kind of eyeball it and say, okay, I see a electric line there, and the person I'm buying the property from does not have a pedestal. Those are those little green things that stand up where your electric comes from. So if they're advertising to you that electric is close but not on the property, you got to figure out more information. And sometimes these electric, because construction is happening so rapidly, some of these engineers are very far out. So that should be one of their first calls. How much is the electric going to cost to bring it to my property? And again, this is if money is not is an option, like actually matters to them. If they have gobs of money, you just explain that could cost more than you think to bring in the electric. Do you want to call someone? Do you not want to call someone? It's fine. If you check it off on your list that you told the person and they don't want to look into it, then that's fine. But no, it's a little more complicated than you think. And don't assume that when you see a line that it's easy, because it might be just over onto the neighbor's property, and that's a disgruntled neighbor that doesn't want you to build, and so they just get in the way. Okay, how soon are you looking to build? So I don't know what it is now, but back when I was building and also when I was selling, a bank is going to require, or did require, 25% of what the house will be worth to put down on the property. Okay, so I want to build $1 million house. You're going to need $250,000 to put down, and then you're getting this homeland package, you're getting one construction loan that you end up finishing and getting into a regular residential loan. So if a person wants to just get a lot, then they have to get a land loan, and then they got to go get a construction loan later. So if they can and wrap it into the whole construction cost and get one big loan, then no, to get that construction loan, it is that 25%. They can buy the land now, pay it off, or pay cash, whatever. That can go towards your 25% deposit towards the house, but have them walk through, like, some people come in and they just think that I'm going to buy a lot for $100,000. I have $10,000 to put down, and they just don't know. So you got to walk them through whether they have the money to be able to do it. Know who in your area does land loans. And I don't know now, but it was always like the local banks always had a product, like Bank of Colorado, Bank of San Juan's. Those are the places I would go. I know our Bank of San Juan's, and I think they're throughout Colorado now. What are they? Glacier? They're now Glacier, I think. They're throughout Colorado. But it's not what 25% of what the land was worth. It's 25% of what the house is going to be worth later. So make sure that your people are pre-approved, or they know what they're doing before you get in the car and go walk with them. Okay, if you think you're going to hold the land, make sure that to know there's a cost to that too. So some homeowner associations are going to charge you, maybe like it's $250 a house a month, but for land, it's going to be $50 a month. So sometimes there's still a cost to holding the land. Taxes, at least in Colorado, are generally a lot higher for lands than they are for a house. So if I had land that was worth $40,000, my taxes are going to be equivalent to the house that's $300,000, because it's a higher tax rate. So know that, like, look into that, or have them look into that a little bit more so they understand it. Okay, last that I can think of. Yeah, oh, okay, and then some homeowner, this is a great thing that some homeowners associations are doing. There might be a charge in the homeowners association to build. So once you start construction, there's like $1,000 deposit, just so that you don't destroy the road, and they might have extra costs to that too, so make sure you look into that. I do want to mention CRPs. You don't get it very often, because again, we're getting less from an ag country into more of a resort or just regular residential country. But CRPs are something where the government would pay people to not farm land. So if you had wheat or some crop and you're promising the government you are going to let it lie, and this all has to do with degrading soil, I'm pretty sure that's where it came from, then they get money from the government every year in order not to do anything with it. So sometimes you'll see ag land that says it's on the CRP and make a little bit of money off it. It's like $25 and it's nothing. It's not really. So if you have somebody coming in that wants to get CRP land, just know it's very infrequent, and it's usually like around here, it's bean land. It's like really dry, kind of deserty land. And just know that's what CRP is about. It has something to do with government money from back in the day. If you want to, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the other thing to do with farmland is that the land you're purchasing can be farmed if you put some stupid crop on it, say Christmas trees or whatever. You don't probably have enough water there to do it, but you then can get a tax. Your taxes dropped way down on your property if you're using 60% of it or 70% of it for that.
What's interesting, that was the next thing great. That was what I needed to talk about. But I want to tell you that, yes, just like you said, that 60% number or whatever it is, know that it used to be that anyone could have, I'm going to use Shenandoah because they're really nice homes. You could have a $900,000 house and 5 acres, and you're going to put like a horse there or a cow there, and you could say it's ag land. It was very easy to do back in the day. But now, like you're saying, Todd, you have to use a significant portion of your land for ag to keep that ag status. So you can purchase land with ag status, and see, again, it's been too many years since I've been out of selling. But let's say your normal taxes would be $2,000 a year. It would bring it down. Ag status would be like $10 a year. It would be so cheap to keep that property because of that ag status. And you'll see properties that are zoned ag. But if your person doesn't immediately put it into production, Colorado wants to take that away because they do not want to not get those taxes from you. So yes, Todd, Christmas Tree Farm is a great example of using it, or actively using it for farming.
I was going to say, in a couple of states I've lived in the past, you had to, out of 3 years, you had to have two of those years producing. You could have 1
Yep.
year off.
Oh, and producing. So it can't be, oh, I had 2 bad years and I couldn't sell my crops. Like, that doesn't work for them. That is, I heard that in a class, and you are right about that. Thank you. If you're trying to help people with pricing, make a map of what's sold in a subdivision over the last few years. It's not like land goes up by 100% a year. So make a map and show them where things have sold. Like, you can do this all online, like Google Maps. And then also look at the topography, say, well, this lot over here sold by this and has a much better view, or the topography is really hard to be able to build a house there. No, check out whether those other properties had septics on them. They had electric that was already installed. They had a well that was already installed. How close is it to traffic? Like, is it right next to a big road that's going to cause it to go down in value? So when you're doing a land search and trying to figure out what you should tell your person it is probably worth, that's how you do it. You're just looking at other properties in that subdivision. You can't really go outside to other subdivisions unless you know they sell for about the same cost. Also the size, you have a 5-acre parcel in a subdivision and the only ones that have sold have 3 acres. Yeah, it's going to be worth a little bit more, but not twice as much, because you can still only build 1 house there. So know that all those things happen. The lay of the land is very important. Is it steep? Would you have to clear a lot of trees? Some people have already done enough clearing of trees that it's not a fire hazard anymore, and you could put a house in without a lot of trouble. Driveways cost a ton of money if they had to do the excavating just to get that driveway in, or just to get that electric. How far back is it in the subdivision? If it's real hard to get to in the winter, maybe as long as it's not right on the main road, if it's a little bit far off, but it's closer to the beginning of the subdivision, it might be worth more. And then, yeah, size. So, and also with farmland, just keep these things in mind. You might not get to this very often, but how much irrigation, if it's such a massive amount of irrigation that you're not going to use it, then it's not worth that much more unless you can actually sell it feasibly. But irrigation obviously makes things worth more. If your land hasn't been used recently, or it was overgrazed, those things make it worth a lot less. Because I've had some where they say, oh, well, my neighbor was sold for this. And it's, you drive by farmland, somebody overgrazes, it's all full of thistle, and it just looks terrible. And then the next lot has this beautiful flowing alfalfa. You can obviously know that one is not going to appraise for as high as the other. Do you have an electric line that goes right through it? The high tension things, those are going to make it worth less money. And yeah, gas wells. Obviously, if you're right near a gas well, it's not going to be worth as much as if you're not. Any other questions you could think of with land? That's pretty much it. It's complicated, and I got